All right, man, peace. So, brothers, this is going to be volume 2 in the series that I recently started called Do Woke Blacks Just Want a Hug? And this edition is going to be featuring Mr. Champ Bailey, the former outstanding cornerback who played with the Washington Redskins, the Denver Broncos, etc. He was recently inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame. And after a 30-minute speech in which he lauded some of the other former greats who played within the National Football League, he decided that he was going to end his speech by delving into the racial dynamic that currently is very pervasive within America. And what we're going to see is, as usual, and there's no disrespect to the brother, he allows a psychosis to start to emanate from him that is very consistent within the minds of the quote-unquote woke black. That being the interdependence between himself as a so-called black man with the so-called Caucasian and the need for their validation. And I don't think that brothers quite grasp how insidious this energy is, this toxic rapport that woke blacks, i.e. liberal blacks, try to maintain between themselves and the Caucasian. You're never going to have a ruling class mentality as long as you need the so-called white man or white woman to quote-unquote understand you. And the reason why woke blacks / Luciferian or liberal blacks continuously pine for the affection and the acceptance of the Caucasian is because they call themselves black. If you call yourself black, you cannot exist without white. That dichotomy is essential. Our people have been totally deculturalized. And until we're aware or cognizant of it to the degree that we need to be aware of it, we're never going to be able to alleviate the symptoms that constantly pop up that lead to us being at the very bottom rung of this society. So anyway, Champ Bailey's going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
This is where we each pick a story we'd like to share with each other and with all of you. Jarika, start us off.
Also, brothers, please pay very close attention to the fact that it is the liberal black woman who decided to make Champ Bailey's pining for the acceptance of the quote-unquote love of the liberal Caucasian as her storyline to report. Once again, the liberal black woman acts as the plug or the intermediary between the liberal black man and the quote-unquote white masses, not even the ruling elite of the so-called Caucasian, just the white masses. That's why you'll notice that liberal blacks are always turning to regular white people and accusing them of having slavery in their ancestral line, even though the vast majority of these Caucasians are the descendants of white trash. Just the facts. Our people assume that just because you're quote-unquote Caucasian, that you come from an ancestry that owned slaves. Why is that? Because they associate Caucasian with rulership.
Had a great story. This is about former Broncos cornerback Champ Bailey. He was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame over the weekend. About a 30-minute speech, but it's at the end that he delivered a very powerful message on race relations.
She calls it a very quote-unquote powerful message. Brothers, the term power often denotes rulership. When you're begging someone to love you, that's not a sign of power. That's a sign of being pitiable. That's really what it is.
The first thing people see when they look at me is not a Pro Football Hall of Famer.
No, actually, that is what they see when they look at you, brother. Especially if they know who you are. If they know that you're Champ Bailey, they say, that's the Hall of Fame level former football player.
Or a husband, or a father.
Well, I would hope that when you look in the mirror that that's what you see. Because that's all that matters is what you see when you look in the mirror. Is an extremely successful man who sought out your goal, accomplished your goal, and now you're a father and a husband. So does it truly matter what other people think about you when they look at you and don't know you?
They view me first as a black man.
Well, how do you view yourself? If you view yourself first as a black man, what does that mean to you to be a so-called black man? Do you know your history and where you come from? Or is all you know and feel about yourself based on what you were taught in quote-unquote history class or what you see on social media today? Where so-called black people are constantly playing violins for themselves and looking to attend the pity party.
So on behalf of all the black men that I've mentioned tonight, and many more out there, who've had the most of the same experiences I've had in my lifetime, we say this to all of our white friends.
Now, brothers, you hear that? He addresses the so-called black man as if he's an ambassador for the so-called black man. He's not qualified to speak for me or any other so-called black man who understands who he actually is. There's no disrespect to this brother, but he's mentally ill and he does not understand this. And a lot of so-called black males in America today are mentally ill. It's called liberalism, i.e., please love me and accept me. I will allow any ideology that you teach me and that you tell me is progressive or productive to enter into my inner self, as long as that means that you're going to give me a hug and that you're going to love me. That's why he's addressing quote-unquote white people. He views the quote-unquote white man and woman as a savior figure, a messianic figure.
When we tell you about our fears, please listen. When we tell you we're afraid for our kids, please listen.
And you know, brothers, I don't mean to laugh, but unfortunately, and this is a big, strong brother, a professional athlete, and he's trying to project this energy of someone who should be pitied, someone who should be promoting fear. And the fear-mongering concept is a major motif within the so-called black community, and for the most part, the so-called black man learns this from his mother, who from slavery was constantly trying to imbue her son with a sense of fear and who he should approach, who he should speak to. And we see it today in many different forms and manifestations. The liberal black female today still tries to pump her son full of fear. Don't talk to women of another race. Be careful how you talk to these white people, how you look at them. When you're driving in your car, every time a police officer approaches, you should be scared for your life. Panic. Do whatever you can to escape the situation. It's like, come on now. Brothers, at the end of the day, if we want to be respected, first we have to respect ourselves. And no one ever honors someone who's looking for pity. They honor people who are looking for power. Of course, that's going to lead to confrontation. But I would rather engage in confrontation that's based within the framework of understanding than to beg someone to feel sorry for me. They're never going to respect you if you want them to feel sorry for you. And right now, this brother is begging the average white man and woman, so-called Caucasian or so-called white man and woman, to quote-unquote listen to him, i.e. believe everything that he says, because in his mind, everything is good with the so-called white man and woman, and they have the power to save his life. People really believe that, as opposed to saying to ourselves, we should be working on ourselves and one another so that we can build up our own infrastructure, our own government, our own society, so that we can rule amongst ourselves. The real issue is that when Champ Bailey looks in the mirror, he doesn't see a king, he doesn't see an administrator, he doesn't see a judge. All he sees is a football player who probably believes that he's lucky to be alive. I would wonder about his childhood and how he was raised, because he seems to suffer from a lack of self-confidence as a human being, not as a football player, but as a human being.
When we tell you there are many challenges we face because of the color of our skin, please listen.
The main challenge that we face as so-called black men, once again, brothers, is a lack of understanding of who we are and where we come from. When we call ourselves black, we're calling ourselves property of the state, because that is a corporate title. The color coding system is corporate. It has nothing to do with actual lineage, racial designation, or what have you. And once again, when you call yourselves black, you're inextricably linking yourself with the so-called Caucasian or so-called white person. That's all you're doing. So we have to seek out who we actually are. People from overseas, they don't call themselves black. Some of them do now because of the television and the education that's starting to pervade into their quote-unquote educational system. But they'll tell you what country they're from, and they'll even tell you what tribe they're from. Our people don't do that because we're in captivity and we're very, very hard-headed. It's very difficult to get the so-called black man to accept that that title of black is not exalting, it's degrading. Because we're not even so-called black, we come in various shades of brown. That's very obvious. So it's very clear that the term black is not something that's meant to elevate us, it's meant to demean us. If you were to call someone from some country in Asia yellow, they're not going to accept that. They're going to tell you what country they're from. They may even tell you what tribe they're from, because certain people in parts of Asia know what tribe they come from as well. So when this brother can look into the camera and say, white man, please listen to us when we tell you about our fears, what is he really saying? He's saying, I'm still a scared slave inside, and I need you to save me.
So as you heard, just a cry for people to listen, take those concerns seriously, and to have someone like him say that, it's great.
On that platform, at that moment,
absolutely.
yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Once again, brothers, notice the liberal black woman is in one accord with the liberal Caucasian man and the liberal Caucasian woman. That's why she believes that Champ Bailey standing up in front of a mass of people and begging the Caucasian man to love him and accept him and listen to him as a good thing. The liberal black female loves to see the so-called black man emasculated, whether she's the one doing it or he's doing it himself.
Yeah.
We've heard it from other athletes before too, but this idea of sticking to sports, there is no reason. They have a voice, they have a platform, and as
Once again, the liberal Caucasian loves the idea of the so-called black athlete as a leader because they know that there's very little of depth that is going to come from the mouth of the average so-called black athlete. Certain people might not like me saying that. It's okay. Most of these so-called black athletes have been bought and paid for. I have no problem with cats expressing their views and their opinions, but saying that you're put on an elevated platform or pedestal per se, that means that even more you have to understand what you're talking about and what the end game is. You cannot tell me that the end game is equality, because that's Marxism. If you're trying to instruct people on how to rule, then that's one thing, but very few so-called black athletes have that mentality at all. They're all pawns of the corporatocracy. That's the bottom line. They're all pretty much bought and paid for, and they know what their limitations are. But once again, just pay very close attention. This dude, Champ Bailey, this little snippet he spent begging the Caucasian man to quote-unquote listen to him, i.e., when I need a shoulder to cry on, please allow me to cry on your shoulder because I have no solutions, I have no plan. So white man, I need you to save me. The liberal black female here was approving of that type of energy, as were these other two co-conspirators at the table.
that gives more people a
And they
reason to
have the
take notice.
experience.
There's no doubt about it. He even said at one point that the things that made him so good on the field were some of the things that may have put him in danger in life also.
Yep.
All right, this is a very...
But anyway, brothers, that's basically it on that. Peace.